Folks, this isn't a drill. I've got another bizarre and dark death that is connected to UFOs and alien technology, but this is a story you might have heard about that might have passed you by. This is a very, very interesting story. A few people have sent this to me and said it actually has a lot to do with what I've been talking about on this channel, related to people dying and disappearing, having known a little bit too much about space, alien, advanced technologies. It sounds ridiculous, but this stuff is actually making sense when you look at the facts. So look, you might remember this incident, okay? This was at the start of 2025 when a rented Tesla Cybertruck exploded in the valet area of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. And this was the very same day there was a terror attack in New Orleans. Now, let's remind ourselves about this situation. And then I'm going to tell you some very, very unexplained, suspicious theories behind this explosion that actually connects it to some of the extraterrestrial technology we've been talking about on this channel recently, right? It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but you're going to see this is crazy.
This was the shocking moment a Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside of Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. The blast occurred on New Year's Day shortly before 9 a.m., killing the driver who was inside the vehicle. At least 7 people nearby also suffered minor injuries. Authorities found the truck packed with charred fireworks-style mortars, camping fuel, and canisters. Police said the lack of damage to the hotel was due to the strength of the Tesla, which remained mostly intact.
The fact that this was a Cybertruck really limited the damage that occurred inside of the valet, because it had most of the blast go up through the truck and out. In fact, if you look on that video, you'll see that the front glass doors at the Trump hotel were not even broken by that blast, which they were parked directly in front of.
The explosion came hours after a driver rammed his rented pickup truck through crowds along Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing at least 15 people. The vehicles in both cities were rented using the app Turo.
Do I think it's a coincidence? I don't know, but what I can tell you is we're absolutely investigating any connectivity to what happened in New Orleans, as well as other attacks that have been occurring around the world. We're not ruling anything out yet.
The dramatic blast is also being investigated by police as a possible act of terror. The driver of the Cybertruck has been identified by local media as Matthew Liversberger, a Colorado resident who served in the Army.
Okay, so Matthew Liversberger, all right, the soldier that was the victim or a perpetrator, depending on how you look at it, losing his life in that Tesla Cybertruck explosion. Now, here's where it starts getting interesting, people. So days after this incident went down, Army intelligence officer Sam Shumate basically revealed that he had actually received a direct email from the deceased man, Matthew, and this was very interesting, the stuff he was sharing.
But wow. Do you want to read the email?
Yep. So this email came in on December 31st at 10:42 a.m. That is Tuesday. He said, "In case I do not make it to my decision point or onto the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release this until 1 January and keep my identity private until then. First off, I am not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. What we have been seeing with drones," he puts that in quotes, he says drones, "is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the US. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPSEN, that's Operations Center, our OPSEN location for this activity it is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they use the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated comm system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. U.S. government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, how China is employing them and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I am armed and I have a massive VBID. Let me pause right there for a second. So he says a massive VBID. When I was talking to the FBI yesterday, they didn't know what a VBID was. I had to explain what that acronym meant, literally.
You fucking serious?
Dead serious. I said it twice, and he goes, you said that word VBID. Can you tell me what that is? For your audience, a VBID, for your audience who has not been in the GWOT for the last 20 years, a VBID is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. In layman's terms, a car bomb, what we saw at Trump Tower. So backing up, he says, I am armed and have a massive VBID. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. Here's where he gets into the other stuff, and this is where we had to redact the names. Well, your producer redacted the names. I have knowledge of this program and also war crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA, and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes of over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of civcas, that's civilian casualties, that killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. U.S. FORA continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft and CENTCOM. The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover-up with U.S. FORA, an agent, redacted, of the DEA. So I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. I worked
Who said, I worked with General Miller's IO staff on this as well as the response. Bala Mugarab, AOBS commander at the time, blank, can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so we can avoid a world war, because this is mutually assured destruction situation. For vetting my LinkedIn is Matt Berg or Matthew Liversberger. An active duty 18Z out of my 110 profile is public. I have an active TSSCI with the UAP USAP access. So he was plugged in, and he was basically claiming that the unidentified drones and flying devices were either sent by China or the US, and that China have this capability for these you know, aerial vehicles that could hover above the White House and basically destroy the US government. That's what he was saying. He sent this the day before he blew up outside the Trump hotel. All right, this ain't normal. So in addition to that, all right, let me give you some context. So apparently these are the drones that he was referring to, most likely these ones that were actually seen in clusters around New Jersey for a period of time. And this is literally the month before he blew up outside the Trump hotel.
SUV-sized drones in New Jersey. Dozens of reports. Seen near military bases, armories, civilian areas, over people's houses, properties owned by President-elect Trump. The FBI says they've been investigating it for a month. A month? But many, like my next guests, say the response has been tepid. What could they be, and how is this so hard to figure out? Joining us now is New Jersey State Senator John Bramnick and former defense and intel official who investigated UFOs for the federal government, Luis Elizondo. Thank you for having both of you here. I appreciate it. Senator, let me ask you, what do you make of how your requests to satisfy people's curiosity have been met by other officials?
Not very well. Either the government doesn't know anything, or the government is in a position where it's an embarrassment to the people of the state of New Jersey.
So they got SUV-sized drones flying around New Jersey, and this was December 2024, right? Our guy Matthew basically ends up blowing up just less than a month after this. He's sending emails basically informing the world, or informing his connections within, you know, the government, that these are foreign governments flying drones secretly that can threaten the United States security. Now, Matthew was a serious guy, okay? He was apparently, by all accounts, an elite Green Beret, and interestingly, investigations by Sean Ryan would reveal that he was actually told that Matthew's DNA didn't match his own kids for some reason.
Tim basically told me this, so I got the POA's number, the public affairs officer, sent it to Jeremy and Tim. He talked to them, and what they wanted us to know was that this guy was an upstanding soldier, an excellent operator, was moving on, was moving towards retirement and moving on to basically enhance the future of warfare. They wanted us to know that. Then the PA officer, sounds like almost jokingly said, which I don't know why you would joke about this, said that, oh, and between us, which why the fuck would a POA officer say between us? I mean, If they didn't want us to know that information, then they just wouldn't have told us that. But they wanted us to know, obviously, that the DNA with his supposed child was not a match. And so I think what they were trying to do is basically make this out to be, oh, this is why this happened. He got bad news that that's not his child, and so that's why he did it. But
so they're trying to muddy the waters and say, oh, he got bad news about his child and the kid wasn't his, so he crashed out and decided to blow himself up outside the Trump hotel for no reason. It's a little bit far-fetched, but there would be other kind of suspicious things that happened in the timeline after this went down. So apparently, following his death when the Cybertruck blew up, the encrypted safety number on his private signal chat was abruptly changed, and a lot of people thought this was very suspicious.
So I looked at, and I want to give context on one of the things. I saw this going around on social media. People were saying that his signal chat, his safety number changed. I don't know if you saw this on X, but it was all over X. Apparently his safety number on Signal changed. He messaged me on Signal. So I went on there to look myself to see if it changed, and sure enough, it had. On January 1st, after the bombing, after he was dead, his safety number changed. That's all he sent me. He said initial contact, and I gave a thumbs up, and his safety number changed at the bottom.
Look at that.
That's after he's dead. I don't know enough about Signal to know why that would happen. Somebody has to have manipulated that, though, and messed with it. Somebody had to have been in his account after the fact and done something for that to have changed.
What did the
So they're saying someone was messing with his Signal account where he was, communicating with people secretly. And basically, throughout this conversation, Sean Ryan and Sam Shoemate would basically detail multiple inconsistencies that they believe, might indicate that Matthew could even still be alive after this incident.
All right, this guy is 20-year special forces. He just got done with team sergeant time. He is a very qualified and very capable Green Beret. Everybody I've spoken to who knew the guy prior, yesterday I spoke to several people, to include his old team leader, who's now lieutenant colonel. Said he was fine. Nothing out of place. His mental state was not something that anybody was concerned about. His ex-girlfriend posted photos of him bragging about how he got a Tesla and all this other stuff. So stick with me here. Very capable guy, but he loads the Tesla up. A Tesla, which Elon Musk brags about being bulletproof, right? So this is one of his selling points. It's bulletproof. We even saw Joe Rogan shoot an arrow at it and wasn't able to puncture this thing. So he loads up a Tesla knowing that it's going to, not explode like he wants it to with fireworks and a bunch of other junk, when he can make a car bomb that's going to level this place. Here's what I think. So the PAO, the Army PAO, is saying that the body inside the cab did not match the DNA of his child. All right. We also know that there was no, they said he was shot by a Desert Eagle. We know that there was no signature when it rolled up. So nobody shot themselves when it rolled up to it. You would have seen a large signature. Mr. Guns and Gear, he's on X. He goes into this a lot in depth. He's a firearms expert, and he talks about this, and there's no signature. So this is what happens. You get a Tesla because it can drive itself up to the hotel, the Trump Tower. You put a body in it, roll it up. It's already burned up. Or it's already shot, excuse me. You don't want to kill anybody, because that's not the message you're trying to send. You're not trying to level the tower or kill a bunch of people. So you load it up with fireworks and a bunch of junk to send a message. And we know that his signal number, or his signal safety number, changed. That can't be done unless you're inside that Signal account. And a lot of people conjecture, was the FBI inside a Signal account, whatever else. But what if he accidentally changed his safety number and goofed up there? He rolled a body up in a Tesla, specifically because a Tesla can drive itself up to the tower, and did what he did to send a message to expose his stuff, and he's still alive out there somewhere.
Well, the other
answered a lot of questions.
The other thing is, maybe the FBI wasn't in his phone. Maybe, this guy's obviously very competent. He's got a TSSCI clearance for the polygraph. He's been associated with USASOC. Obviously, he was on this operation in 2019. By the way, the general in charge of that was General Miller. You'll see that in the email that we post on X later after this interview comes out. Maybe he changed his number on purpose and switched phones because he obviously was tipped off or conducted his own counter surveillance and caught Homeland or FBI tracking him. And
this is crazy, right? So they're saying this guy was so elite as a military operator, he may well have got a body, self-drove the Tesla into the front of the Trump Hotel, blown it up on purpose to send a message about this alien technology. Okay, it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but this is what they're actually saying. These are serious people that they're putting forward these theories. So There will be no direct correlation found between this incident at the Trump Hotel and the New Orleans attack, but some sources would basically confirm that, you know, the attacker displayed zero signs of radicalization prior to the event, and just both of these incidents are still very unexplained, and the timing of them is extremely suspect.
Do you think there was any correlation between him and the New Orleans attack?
No.
I don't either.
I looked at all of that. I looked at the posts. I looked at the, you know, people are scrambling for news. Everybody wants to post something. They want to be the guy on social media that posts the groundbreaking thing. And I saw these connections to Fort Bragg, and they deployed together at this time. And great. So did 500,000 of the rest of us. I was at Fort Bragg. Oh man, tie me to Delta Force. I must have been part of Delta Force and some cyber. No, I had nothing to do with them. You know, it's this nonsense. It's a big organization. The Army is very large. You're picking things out and you're trying to make this a thing. That New Orleans guy was a staff sergeant who got out of the active duty Army in 2015, and he was in the reserves until 2020. People are saying in the last year he was radicalized. I talked to multiple of his peers, to include, I'm going to be very, very careful with this, former leadership, I'm not going to give what echelon they were at, former leadership of his. There was no indication at all back then that he was radicalized. He didn't say radical. And I've seen the posts. I saw several people who were saying, well, we have confirmed posts that he was saying radical Islamic things. I don't believe it, because nobody he worked with confirmed that. They said, no, we had no indication that he was like this. And if you talk to people now, they said in the last year he was radicalized. He started taking on these more radical teachings of Islam and everything else. And he had this, he fell into financial hardship and all these other things. So you're telling me this guy who was a former 42 Alpha S1 guy, human resources, pushes your paper, and then an IT guy, 25 Bravo, is somehow connected to a Green Beret team sergeant out of 10th? No.
Well, also, they found an ISIS flag in New Orleans,
which
they didn't find any of that here.
I think that might have been just some silliness on his part, trying to take on some kind of Islamic banner of jihad. I would conjecture, all conjecture, say that is likely he has no affiliations to ISIS. But
you know, I wonder. I don't really believe in coincidences. You know, and both of these explosions happened in the same day, or both of these attacks, whatever you want to call them, happened on the same day. The attack and the explosion, which obviously wasn't meant to be an attack.
That's fair, and I don't believe in coincidences either normally, but I look at a landmark day like January 1st, and I think, what better day? Any day. I'm going to do a thing, January 1st. Yeah. And I think possibly old boy in New Orleans had help. I don't think that he could have done all the spotting and surveying and assessing himself. He would have likely had to at least have a spotter to say, yeah, you're good to go. Maybe. But I think that's plausible. But other than that, I have a hard time making that connection.
Man. So a lot of people find these connections, you know, very, very interesting, very, very coincidental. American UFOologist Stephen Greer would, in his opinion, connect the casualty to suppressed UFO-related disclosures.
So he wrote this manifesto that they're trying to suppress, like they do with everything else. But it sort of ebbs into this world. Is there any connection just between what is going to happen next week and what we saw in Las Vegas on New Year's Day?
Correct. There is. And again, that was sort of a psychological warfare operation by someone in special forces giving a heads up on this. It's not a coincidence it happened at the Trump building and that it was in a Cybertruck. He refers to gravitic propulsion systems. And that's what's going to be coming out because we have mastered gravity control for decades. And this is why many of the craft people see that they think is alien.
And he wrote about that in the manifesto.
So people believe that this is basically, you know, the anti-gravity technology that is apparently had by the government for years, reverse engineered from alien crafts. And a lot of people believe that this explosion was actually a message for that. Now, one thing to note was that despite the car being fully burned, Matthew's passport and ID were recovered from the scene safely. What are the chances, huh?
Explosion. Among the charred items found inside that truck were 2 firearms, both purchased legally, a number of fireworks, a passport, a
whole passport. You could just read the whole thing. It was in great condition.
Military ID and credit cards. Investigators say the driver's body is burnt beyond recognition.
I'm feeling comfortable to give you this information.
So the body's burnt beyond recognition and the DNA doesn't match his kids, but passport is in great condition.
There's a tremendous amount of substantial evidence to include he rented the Turo vehicle. There are 2 tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm. that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to what it is that we now know he had on his body.
7 people standing nearby were injured in that explosion. Investigators say the Cybertruck was rented in Colorado. Police are also thanking Elon Musk for providing video from charging stations that are helping in the investigation. The FBI says...
Yeah, Elon Musk was able to help out and get busy. Apparently, the police were able to recover some interesting information. They got data from the, victim/perpetrator's phone, as well as video from those charging stations where the Tesla was charged.
Accessing the data in one of the phones that was recovered. You can see the phone here in the vehicle. It's very burnt from the outside. You can see another image here. But we're able to take this phone and be able to extract the data using a variety of different tools. And in that, we've identified a variety of information, but one thing in particular is there was an application in there that the suspect used to take notes. In that application, one of the notes is titled Surveillance Log by the Suspect. It appears to be more of a journal of activity. It dates for about 10 days leading up to the incident, from December 21st to December 31st of this past year. In that surveillance log, or as we would like to call it, a journal, because it's more of a diary of activity that he's conducting, we identify multiple locations that match what we have in the route. We identify activity that we've matched. So, for example, him purchasing firearms, him purchasing camping equipment or other types of equipment that were used in this incident, matched what our data showed in terms of the route and the video surveillance we were recovering along that route. In addition to that, in terms of our assessment of the post-blast to confirm that he's the only individual involved and the only individual in the vehicle, we did a variety of video and photo comparisons to match the clothing. So if you look here, for example, this is a video in Las Vegas, and you're going to see in a moment here where he parks the Tesla truck, he comes out, and you're going to see some descriptive clothing that matches some of the other video that we've recovered along the route. Please keep in mind, this is a very extensive investigation, so there's a lot of content for us to review and examine. We're just showing examples and samples as we get them. There's more information as we go through it. But in this video, you can see even the distinctive jacket that he is wearing in that vehicle. The other thing that's important is the sheriff mentioned yesterday that Tesla sent to us engineers to come to Las Vegas to help us extract data from the vehicle. Thanks to their support, we were able to extract an SDMI chip from the Tesla vehicle, and Tesla was able to confirm to us using the data from the vehicle that the vehicle was not in full self-driving mode at any time during this incident.
So that does kind of, trash the theory that he put a dead body in the car and self-drove it up there as a decoy, okay? And then combine that with the matching of the tattoos. It does sound like that probably was his body in there. Maybe it all went wrong. It is very, very bizarre and unexplained. Now, connecting back to what was said earlier in his little sort of goodbye note that he put, where he suggested that the drone activity that was going on was actually, foreign governments testing anti-gravity technology. Well, that connects to all those drones that were allegedly seen in New Jersey, still unexplained. And investigative journalist Ross Coulthard basically says that he believes that the mysterious New Jersey drones were indeed UFOs, just as was claimed by the Tesla bomber, okay? This is Ross Coulthard now claims that the New Jersey drones were anti-gravitic Chinese vehicles, just like the January 1st Cybertruck suicide bomber Matthew Allen Liversberger said. Matthew Allen Liversberger, an ex-Green Beret, took his own life to warn the public there will be a nuclear war between the USA and China if something doesn't drastically change, but the rabbit hole on this one goes deep.
The suggestion that is being put to me is that the Chinese have indeed made a huge advance in electrogravitic technology, and it's taken us by surprise, and that the United States has been caught asleep at the wheel. It was complacently, hubristically thinking that it was way ahead of its foreign adversaries, and in fact, the big show that took place, notably, I know it was reported mainly over New Jersey, I'm increasingly persuaded that the initial show, at least, was, in part, Chinese. And that what happened was the United States responded with technology of its own to muddy the waters. And so you had this ridiculous situation where, if you believe it, and this is the implication not only from my Senator Mike Roun's interview, but also from the interview that General Glenn Van Herk, the former head of Northcom and NORAD, did to 60 Minutes Bill Whitaker a few months ago. They basically admitted that there's someone operating with impunity over the continental United States, flying so-called drone technology. These drones are not using known propulsion systems. They're not using jets. They're not using propellers. They're not using any kind of known turbine propulsion system that emits the kind of heat that we're used to from that kind of technology. The suggestion is they're using some type of electrogravitics. And my sources are telling me that the big story that, frankly, the US doesn't want you to know about right now, the story that's not being discussed in the media, is the implications of the admissions made by General Glenn Van Herk, in particular, to 60 Minutes, which kind of went through the gate and were largely ignored by most other media, but which I think are incredibly significant.
Very, very spooky, right? So I'll show you the rest of this thread because it's really interesting. It says Jake Barber's organization for summoning UAPs, Skywatcher, is filled with ex-military personnel, especially Green Berets. In my opinion, Matthew Allen Liversberger was one of the 40 whistleblowers who informed David Grush firsthand about the UAP phenomenon, and he recently lost his life. Jake Barber is referring specifically to him, not another whistleblower who died much earlier. He's talking about the ex-Green Beret, Matthew Allen Liversberger. So let's hear what he said.
Mr. Quest, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs? Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
Are you one of David Grush's 40 first-hand witnesses that he says he presented to the Intelligence Community Inspector General Thomas Monheim?
No, Dave and I met after his initial complaint was filed with the ICIG, and those guys represented a set. I don't know the 40. I know of some of them. One of them is the guy who's no longer with us, whose demise was quite conveniently timed for those who might have something to do with it. But sorry, I didn't mean to go there with it. But
Mr. Quest, finally,
so everyone thinks something else went on, something else a little bit more complicated went on with his death. So it says the war with China is part of a larger plan about who will dominate the new world after the geophysical event, a plan that was leaked in 2010 by Bill Ryan. Everything is going according to the plan, and there isn't a single force or whistleblower that will change the minds of the elite.
China will catch a cold. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western world because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts, something that would be justifiably called the Third World War with a much more major nuclear exchange. They believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. There have been trillions of dollars that have been spent on deep underground bases for some reason, which we don't know why it is. That there are repeated cyclical geophysical events about every 11,500 years. Information about what really happened to Atlantis was very probably in the Great Library of Alexandria that burnt down a couple of thousand years ago. There are persistent rumors that much of that information has been retrieved and it's in the Vatican Library. This is information which is not in the public domain.
And so the final thread said, now Ross Coulthart, along with many other UAP insiders, journalists and billionaires, are aware of the geophysical event and the fact that it's being hidden from the public.
What I'm aware of is that everybody's telling me we're on borrowed time.
To the extent you can talk about what might be imminent, what is imminent. Time is not a luxury that we can afford. The time has come. We need to start having the conversation collectively. We should have had it a while ago, but we really need to start having the conversation.
Yeah, it's probably already written on the wind one way or another, and it's going to happen. And there's little or nothing we can do about it. Part of that is a function of nobody's going to listen anyway, and so who are we talking to, right? So we'll know, maybe we'll have more information than the average person on the street is going to have. Things are really going to be bad. And how do you prepare yourself for that? And those that you love and care for, or friends, how do you prepare for any of that, right? So that's probably the best that we can do.
I think things are going to be pretty difficult starting in a few years. And from what I've been told by sources.
What does that mean? It's going to be difficult?
I mean, I can't say specifically. I don't know that much yet, and I can't really say, but just that a lot of what we take for granted now in life, I don't think is going to be, we're not going to have it. A lot of things we have now that makes our lives as wonderful as they are.
He says that he's as sure as he can be that the people who are calling the shots in the world, you can call them the Illuminati, the controllers, the cabal, whatever name you have for them, they believe that there is going to be what he called a geophysical event, a major geophysical event. There have been trillions of dollars that have been spent on deep underground bases for some reason which we don't know why it is.
Earth's climate also changes pretty radically over the course of, like, say, 10,000 years. It can shift from being extremely hot to extremely cold. You can really go down a deep rabbit hole if you read about ice ages.
So interesting.
That how much Earth's climate has changed, and even where the magnetically where the poles are has shifted over time.
So on the climate change issue, I'm fully convinced. After all these years, even though we may not know exactly what is causing climate change, we suspect it's the sun. We have a lot of evidence to show that it's probably the sun.
The answer to this is I think there is real concern about geophysical risks. Yeah. And one way to deal with that is to make sure we don't bet the ranch on one planet. So I think the first is a solar minimum, where you get big drops in the economy and the agriculture, and you can't feed the population.
Right. So because there are changes in climate because of the distance of the Earth from the sun.
Right.
And that changes.
Right. So we know throughout history we go through periods of solar minimum.
So they are worried about climate change, but they don't think it's coming from your suburban.
Right. It's not coming from human behavior. Now, there are environmental problems coming from human behavior.
For sure. That's for sure.
Right.
For the record, I have one friend who's very well informed who's convinced me that is real.
The other thing is, it appears to me, if you go back through history, every 10,000, 12,000 years, we have some kind of huge disaster.
An extinction event.
A near extinction event. I think that whether it's a pole shift, a magnetic pole shift is one of the theories of what causes these events. But there is a history of near extinction event.
Now, there have been some significant rumors of events regarding UAP that may occur within, like 10 years or so. I don't know if it's something coming or a natural disaster. You hear of something big coming down the pike. Have you heard of these claims? And if so, do you have any idea what it may be?
Yes, I've heard of them. Yes, I'm aware of them. And I'm not able to have that conversation.
So there's going to be some kind of, UFO related event. Could be, the introduction of anti-gravity technology, could be nuclear war, could be some kind of, unexplained famine or disease. We had COVID, all types of things. It is very, very suspicious. Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to leave you with that's super creepy about this is just the fact that in November 2025, a new police report would confirm that there was actually an existence of a 70-page manifesto connected to the Trump hotel explosion, which was immediately classified by the Pentagon and concealed from all public knowledge.
Specifically, though, you cited that Vegas police report, and twice in that police report, they talk about how the Pentagon has classified that document. The manifesto is what I'm referring to there, and they say that it was why they had to stop sharing information with the public, because the Pentagon, under Joe Biden, the Pentagon did classify that quickly, and so we've got a lot of questions here. Listen, the American people deserve answers, and I wish I had more for you as to what is being classified and why it is, but they won't share any of that with us. I don't need to hear the details. I just need to hear your justification as to why you've deemed this as classified material.
Right. I mean, it seems like where there's smoke, there's fire, because you're classifying something. Well, then we're on to something. I mean, that's the way that I look at it, right? Yeah. So maybe we can pull out at least a few threads of what he said in that original email that might have raised red flags. I mean, because this is a story that crossed across like normal news and into like UFO subreddits and everything. Like, what did he know about like advanced propulsion technologies, like what the United States has been working on in a clandestine nature, carrying out war crimes moves? And we've covered stories here on the show on Redacted about U.S. Marines who witnessed the use of advanced propulsion technologies, like in the jungle, in Indonesia after a massive tsunami, carrying out horrible, horrible crimes. So we've heard from whistleblowers on these advanced technologies. Do you think that might be what it is?
Yeah, it could possibly be that. I had Sam Shoemate. He was the intelligence officer that you cited at the beginning of this, who received that email. And I asked him, and he still doesn't even know himself. I mean, he was the one who was in communication with him and was trying to do some digging on all of it. It's really hard to vet the information that was in that email as well.
So look, it's so creepy, man. It's just another person that seems to know a lot, maybe a little bit too much about these advanced propulsion technologies. They're calling it reverse engineered alien technology. They're saying craft from outside of our world has landed here, crashed here. They've reverse engineered these anti-gravity technologies. They're spinning mercury around a small tube that somehow with a nuclear reactor can actually, break the laws of gravity. It is wild. Okay, this is apparently a real thing. So let me know what you thought of this. I'm going to keep digging. Any more suspicious deaths that I find related to UAP alien technology, I'm going to make a video about, because this is actually blowing my mind. Every day we're finding new information out, me and my team, and it is absolutely blowing our little brains. Okay, so let me know what you thought of that. If it's a bunch of far-fetched nonsense, let me know down in the comments. If you actually believe in some of this stuff and you think that this is really what's going on, let me know, and I will keep covering this. But for now, folks, I'm out. Thank you for watching. Peace.